So I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into my own programming theories and how I like to program for strength in the context of powerlifting and just overall general thoughts and theories and principles that I have around this. And I want to make it very, very clear. This is not the only way to program. This is not the only way to get strong. It's just what I found to work very, very well for myself and plenty of clients. I've seen lots of success with it. And I do believe that for myself, like this is a very, very good way to program long-term intelligently to make sure that you're maximizing progress and strength adaptations in the long run for several reasons. So one, the whole purpose of powerlifting in terms of powerlifting training, we want to mainly cover two important adaptations. That's going to be muscle hypertrophy and strength skill. Muscle hypertrophy is going to be the basis of any sort of volume block or hypertrophy block. The whole theory behind this, and we have good scientific research to back this up, is that the bigger the muscle is, all else being equal, that muscle is going to have more potential to be strong once you teach it the strength skill that it needs to be strong, that all the neural qualities and whatnot. So that's the whole general idea behind why you want to have a volume block. The second part of it is going to be strength skill, and that's going to be best accumulated with higher relative percentages, lower reps, heavier loading, and more practice with the competition lift. And you need to have higher percentages and all those things I mentioned earlier to actually push that and actually work on the skill of a strength skill. It's different pushing a maximal load for 90% or 100% of your max versus doing pump out work with like sets of 8. So I want to just talk a little bit here about how I program for each phase of training. Just give you an example of this and whatnot. So first off, I want to say that in my whole entire training paradigm, if I have a powerlifter, I'm going to mainly track how much volume that I'm giving to each competition lift in the context of how many reps am I giving them in the context of a week. So typically squats, typically bench press is going to need the most volume, the most amount of total reps, and then followed by squat being more in the middle, and then deadlift going to be needing the least. And this has to do with fatigue and just some physiological differences between the upper body, how much loading can actually be used, and whatever. But that's essentially what I'll do is I will have some metric where I'm tracking bench press. Let's say I have a client and let's say in their I give them 3 reps on their bench press, and then on squat, and this is just hypothetical, maybe like, and this is what I found work really, really, really well for them. And this is going to be like across the training. Let's say you just have something like this. By the way, this is not 100. This it's going to change based on so many different factors. But let's say that this is what I found with certain clients. With like one of them, this is just how they best respond very well to this amount of volume. Well, I'm not going to change the amount of repetitions I'm giving them to push the adaptations in different blocks. The reason for that is because I want consistency. I want to be able to manipulate certain aspects of the programming to actually push the best adaptations for that client. So if I find that a client is working very, very well with a certain amount of reps on their competition lift, I'm going to assume that we need that much practice. We should keep that in regardless of the phase. Now what's going to change is the absolute loading, intensities, amount of sets that you have to do to get that, because with higher reps, you need less sets, essentially less practice to push that, such as in the case with the volume block, which is kind of demonstrated right here. If we're in an intensity block, we're going to need more sets and more practice to actually accumulate the volume that we need at those higher percentages, since you can't do, the same amount of reps you can do with 70% as you can with 80%, obviously, to anybody who knows that. So that's a little bit behind my whole entire competition lift. Now, what I will also track is how many general sets am I giving per body part. So let's say, I find, let's say for chest, somebody is responding very well to 14 sets a week. Well, since that's the volume that they need in terms of overall sets, I'm not going to change that throughout the entire block, because I'm going to assume the only difference is that is going to be the competition specificity. And you can kind of see that right here. Let's say, like, across the week they need 14 sets on their chest with what I'm giving them. The relative percentage of that is just going to be different depending on how much of that is going to be consumed by accessory movements, how many of that is going to be consumed by the actual competition lift, depending on the phase and whatnot. So that's just a little bit of the general theory behind why I do programming and like how I will essentially set up the training block. When I do first get a client, I will work with a general average in terms of what I found to work very, very well for clients based off of their, and there's extensive questionnaires I have them fill out that I kind of do come to this, volume sort of a recommendation. But again, the main thing that's going to just change is going to be how many reps and how many, somebody needs to actually do to have the competition lift. I found for most people, anywhere between 10 to about 15 sets per week is typically best for most people on their muscle groups, like the bigger ones. And you can go higher than that, but usually there's going to have to be really good reason for that. A general rule of thumb is that moderate volumes are always going to be better for long-term progress than really high volumes or really low volumes. You can get away with really low volumes for a short period of time. You can get away with really high volumes for a short period of time. And, maybe if I'm in a peaking block, I'm going to, if we're trying to have super compensation, I'll push maybe 10, 20% above that. So like, let's say if in a peaking block, 14 sets per week, if I want to add about 20% of that, I'm going to maybe do 16 to just have a little bit more of an overreaching effect, but nothing really more than that. So anyways, kind of just diving into these examples. So when I'm programming, let's say I have a volume hypertrophy block, I will usually keep the RPEs lower on my competition lifts, on the average RPE, and there's a few reasons for that. One, I have found the competition lifts not to be the best for pushing hypertrophy, although they can be good tools. They're typically not the best. As well, if we're thinking long term in terms of periodization scheme, we want to be able to push intensity hard in our strength blocks, and harder relative, and have this pulsatility, because it's going to help keep athletes healthier, have less joint issues, less chance of chronic injuries from pushing the exact same motor patterns all the time, and also just have some novelty. It's mentally exhausting pushing the bench press, squat, and deadlift all the time really, really, really hard, and it's kind of nice at times to actually be able to do more bodybuilding work. It's it's a little bit less stressful on the same structures. You can get a really good pump and focus on other areas and develop another very important quality as a powerlifter, which is muscle hypertrophy and size. And I will not, and I view this as skill practice. We're still accumulating volume to push hypertrophy, hence the higher reps, but it's mostly skill practice. And I want to emphasize mostly higher reps to make sure I'm reaching this quota of whatever the athlete needs. I found on an average, they respond best to in terms of total number of repetitions done on each of the competition lifts per week. And then I will also I will put more emphasis on accessory volume, and typically have more of the volume in that phase be accumulated by accessories. So maybe in addition to the incline dumbbell bench press, I'm going to add in, maybe if they need some more extra work, we're going to do a machine chest fly. And maybe it's going to be 2 by 10 to 15, again, 8 to 9 RPEs. I'll push intensity harder on the accessories, because I believe that intensity on accessories is a little bit better, especially because we're going to usually have accessories at a higher rep scheme. We're going to need to push those intensities harder, because at higher reps, we do need to push closer to failure in order to have a good stimulus. It's different with lower weights. You can get away with lower RPEs, like 5, and even below that, probably, and actually see some good stimulus for not only strength, but also hypertrophy. So that's a little bit behind why I do that. But again, more emphasis on accessory intensity and volume in order to push hypertrophy. Give those connective tissues a little bit of a break, and potentially later progress in intensity blocks, because we're going to think in the long term as well as right now, and for athlete development and long-term progress, staying healthy, all that good stuff. I will still keep some exposure to 80+% loads to maintain strength skill. that is important to help gain that skill and also have more of a less lag time between phases, because if you're doing a purely block periodized approach, you're not having any sort of exposure to sets of 3 or whatever, because it's not in that block's loading range. You're going to notice there's going to be some lag time. You're going to feel a bit out of practice. It's going to feel a little bit wonky. Essentially, you're going to lose some productive training time as a result of that. So we can, smoothen out those gaps and those transition periods with, having a top set with the percent for back downs. That's going to be better. Now you notice here, again, going back to this, let's say that, I will track how much volume we're doing per lift. If I know that my athlete's goal is to be a powerlifter, they will care about the sport. Total reps on bench press in this cycle are going to be 27 reps. Okay, so I'm going to again say that and look at that for later intensity or strength blocks. Now, how this will differ in a strength block, if you can look right here. So you can obviously see it looks a little bit different. I have higher RPEs on the competition lift. There's going to be more sets given to the actual competition lift and a little bit less of a load percentage drop to help keep push intensity a little bit more, and a little slightly higher average RPEs across the sets, and more skill practice in order to have a similar number of reps as we did to the exact one. And we don't need to have it exactly the same, but as long as it's within about I would say about 10% of the phases, you're probably going to be more or less okay. But you're going to have more exposure to higher percentages and more practice with the competition lifts to practice that strength skill more, since that is the goal of intensity and strength blocks. And I will also lower down, because again, we're doing more sets. If I'm saying we're doing 14 sets of chest per week, I count that the same regardless of whether or not, let's say, if they're doing 40 sets per week in a volume head block, I'm going to keep that the exact same in a strength block. The difference is that how much of that, again, like what I said earlier, how much of that volume slot is being actually filled by the competition lift, if that makes sense. And you can see that pretty clearly written here. As well, I do slightly lower down the intensity on the accessory lifts, since the goal of an intensity block, again, is more or less to just maintain hypertrophy. We're not trying to push it, although it can certainly happen, and it does happen in strength blocks. It's not the primary goal, and this will help create more directed adaptation, free up some more recovery resources in order to help push into adaptations a little bit more in the intensity and strength block. So I just want to make this video just kind of explain a little bit of, just give you guys a little bit of insight into my programming, since I get some questions about it. Again, this is a lot of theory based off of what I've seen from my own practical experience on what works very well for most people. I've seen really good success with this. I apply this to myself and many other athletes, and more or less this is what I will do going into developing aside like a peaking block. We're going to peak strength and taper it, but I'm not really talking about that right here, because it's really hard to talk about how to peak and taper. That's a very nuanced topic, and I found that if you don't understand this basic stuff first, you're never going to actually understand how to do that. So this is just a very general basic overview, so that you guys can kind of use to just see maybe consider this with your own programming on how you should structure things, and maybe make some own considerations with your own programming, and challenge some assumptions that you might have, and help you to think a little more critically about things. But yeah, hopefully this video was helpful and something insightful for you guys. If you guys did like it, please make sure to like it, comment, share, subscribe. And if you guys want me to see some more videos like this, and if you guys want your own programming to using these same principles but are completely individualized to you, you can go down below adampeelerfitness.com, apply for my coaching services to work one-on-one with me, or you can sign up for custom programming or custom training cycle. I'd love to help you guys get really jacked and strong and all that good stuff. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.